First thing understanding leads to is freedom. When I start getting freedom, everything changes. And freedom is totally misunderstood. A lot of people have kind of a child's view of freedom. You know, a child says, I want to be free to do and think whatever I want, and I wish my parents would just let me do what I want. That's not freedom. Because freedom means I'm free to choose what to do. But they don't realize that our entire lives are totally controlled by our thoughts, by our habits, by our desires, by circumstances, by things that are happening, by things that trigger us and set us off. What happens is we have a stimulus, and then we respond to that stimulus. And part of that understanding we gain is we start to see that stimulus doesn't have to equal response. Stimulus is something like I stick my hand in a flame, I pull away because it's a protective mechanism. It's normal for me to, when I put my hand in a flame, to pull off. Otherwise, I'll stick my hand on the stove and burn myself. Those are good things. But I'm not free to put my hand in the flame. I'm not free to make the choice for myself. I'm controlled by it. Another example is hunger. Anybody thinks I'm wrong here, go for a day without eating. If you go for a day without eating, by the end of the day, that stimulus of I need to eat will become so strong that you won't be able to think of anything but food. And you won't be able, you think you're going to die. Unless I eat right now, I'm starving. You're not really starving. A human being can go for 32 days without food. We think we're going to die after 12 hours. We're totally controlled by the stimulus of hunger. Well, one of the processes that most religions in the world practice is fasting. And fasting helps us to learn that that stimulus doesn't have to be responded to. We gain control over it. We're not so afraid that we're going to starve to death anymore. We still feel the hunger, but it doesn't control our lives anymore. We start to become free from that. After a while, we can go 3 days without eating, and after a while, we can go 10 days without eating. Sometimes we can go 30 days if we practiced it enough. We can learn that we don't have to respond to the stimulus. Well, there's a guy in history who was totally free because he had such insight and such understanding that he was free of everything. And his name was Mahatma Gandhi. Everybody heard of him? You know, Mahatma Gandhi was so free that they did an appendectomy on him with no anesthetic. Instead of flinching, he felt it, but they just cut him open and did an operation. And while they were operating on, he was having a conversation with people. That's freedom. He said human beings are capable of understanding the stimulus response mechanism so well that we can grow beyond that. Well, if he could do that, couldn't we learn not to overreact when somebody says something that makes us upset? Couldn't we learn not to overreact when we see a bumper sticker we don't agree with? Couldn't we at least learn not to always act in the same way every time a stimulus happens? That's what leads to our freedom.